yes, the moisture is slowly on its way up. And if anybody knows what those purple flowers are, I'd like to know that. I've been seeing them out there in that field for about the past month. And we'll be getting another look at them again, maybe in the next week or so. All right, let's head into the charts. We do have some weather, and surprisingly a moderate risk, but it's not on the Great Plains. It's way up here in New York and Connecticut. So they've had a bit of weather there, and the other thunderstorm area is in West Texas and northeastern New Mexico. Watch boxes. We've only got a couple of severe watches out at this time. And let's take a look at the surface map, and we'll start out with the big picture. This is the isobars, fronts, and mixing ratio. The mixing ratio is in green, and it's a proxy for dew point. And one reason I like this over dew point is it's a little more sensitive to the higher values. So the gradients really stand out well where it's important. And 10 degrees right there, or I'm sorry, 10 grams per kilogram, that's going to roughly equate to about 50 Fahrenheit. So we've got our front through Oklahoma and West Texas, and that's that same front that we had up there in Nebraska a couple days ago, and it's just been gradually moving south. Very classic sequence for this time of year. So what else do we see? It's definitely a weak pattern here. We've got a low pressure system up there in Canada off the top of the chart. We've got an outgoing polar air mass over the Great Lakes region. We've got this Bermuda high type feature, and we've got a disturbance out there in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And then of course our thermal trough is settling in across Arizona. So let's take a look at the mesoscale. We do have storms in Texas. And what I'm going to do here is start with a very general picture of where the boundaries are. So we're not going to really go over this with a fine-tooth comb or anything. We can see that there's 70s way out here in Arkansas. Very dry conditions out here in New Mexico. Looks like about 13 dew points. So in between, just very roughly, we've got a dry line in West Texas like that. So I wanted to just kind of do that cursory overview so I can jump into the satellite, because that's where some boundaries are really showing up at this time. So we'll start out with the wider view. There's West Texas there, and we've got clusters of multi-cells all up and down the region, and this looks like a little area of dust. Let me take a close look at that. This is the first time I'm seeing it, so yeah, that looks very similar to that boundary that was racing westward yesterday. To really pick out the boundaries, we have to go back even further, and I've got a different sequence that we can look at. So let's check that out. And this is thanks to College DuPage. And let me slow this down just a tiny bit. And this starts out around 1 o'clock this afternoon. This is West Texas. There's Midland right there. Lubbock is up at the top, and Abilene is right around here. So let's pause that. So starting out, we don't really see any boundaries here. And the boundaries are a pretty important feature on a severe weather day. So radar may show some features, but we're going to be pretty dependent on the surface network. And also, there's a website called METIS. Let me show you this website. We've never really gone over this. So you go to your search bar, go to Google, Bing, or Alta Vista, or Ask Jeeves, and put in METIS and then NOAA. That's a good way for finding things that you want to locate that have to do with weather. Just put in NOAA after it. That'll kind of pin it down a little bit. And we get into this meteorological assimilation data ingest system. This is a website that's been around about 15 years, but it's undergone some changes over the years. So we're going to go to this data display down here in the bottom right. And we just click on the links, and that will take us to the data display page. And this is a good source for filling in the gaps here with different types of networks, mesoscale networks operated by states and universities, also school networks, radio operators, that kind of thing. And I guess we have to zoom in all the way or have to be patient, one of the two, but the data should come up here, and yeah, there we go. So this is not a great way of viewing the data. You just kind of have to hover over each one. But if you look at the wind direction, for example, that can help clue you into where there may be outflow. But you do have to take this with a grain of salt, because a lot of these anemometers on the school mesonets and home mesonets, they're just mounted on the roof, which means you can have errors of 60 to 80 degrees on that direction. So definitely do be careful and make sure you have some consistency there. But as you can see, we're really filling in the gaps here between Lubbock and Abilene and Fort Worth. Plenty of stations here. So we'll go back to the federal network here, and let me just stop and make sure the audio is looking good. Okay, no complaints, looking good. All right, so let's go to that high-resolution satellite. Okay, so we're going back to this, and we're kind of looking at the evolution of these clusters of storms out there in West Texas. So this frame here is about 12:47 p.m. Now, there is one clue you can use here at the very top. You see this stratocumulus field up here. That's around Paducah up to Turkey, along the caprock there, and it's showing these transverse bands. That's a good sign that that's going to be back behind some sort of boundary, maybe something like that right there, some sort of outflow or front. In any case, this is an indication of cool, relatively stable air. And then down to the south, we see what looks like these are more or less cloud streets. And with that right there, the atmosphere is pretty much unstable for the most part. So let's roll this forward. We can see our first towers going up, and let me bring up the overlay. Give me just a second here. No, you're not going to do that. Site wants to reload. I got to remember to turn off the auto refresh. In fact, let me go and do that to the other loops here. Good grief, that one wants to update. Let me just go ahead and this one's already done. We'll take a look at this, and we'll return things back to where we were originally. Okay, county borders and roads and rivers. So these storms are going up, looks like just southwest of Post and northeast of La Mesa. So I think that's right around Borden County, maybe. So let's watch those storms develop there. So what do we see here? Don't see anything that resembles a dry line like north and south. It looks like they're going up along maybe an east-west boundary, perhaps. Maybe old boundaries from yesterday. We can see the first anvil streaming out, and here's this congested cloud field. That's indicative of more towering cumulus going up. And you can see these are trying to come together. Then we're up to about 2 p.m. Storms are going up, and we have the Old Faithful storm down there at Fort Stockton. And that Old Faithful, that's a Tim Marshall term. Usually on a major storm day, we have development there kind of to the southwest of Fort Stockton there. It's very common. All right, so we can see a little differential motion there. Some of the cloud field is moving west to east, so it looks like the dry line is kind of pushing in. And on the other side, looks like we have a little bit of east to west in the low cloud field. And you can see a definite change between the texture of this low cloud and the other clouds out to the west. These are cloud field different LCLs. Here the LCL is probably about 2 to 3 kilometers forward there. You can kind of see that there's small boundaries in here that only reveal themselves once the cloud field gets going. So that kind of shows you some of the complexity of what's going on. And then out to the east, look at that boundary right there. Cells around Palo Pinto and I guess around Possum Kingdom Lake, driving that upflow boundary up there towards Wichita Falls. Okay, now we have another loop, and this is going to be for Colorado and the Texas Panhandle. So let me get this straightened out. Go back. Yeah, look at that little ripple right there. There's probably some sort of wave going across the region in the upper level field. Let me get this centered here. I'm going to roll this forward just a little bit, and you can see how that kind of migrates west to east. So there's some sort of disturbance embedded in the upper level flow, and the movement, the speed kind of clues you into what level that might be at. So that looks definitely like maybe a upper level disturbance there. At this time, we don't have very much in the way of boundaries. Looks like pretty extensive Cloud Street field. Looks a little bit more stable down there around Amarillo. I can see maybe some vague boundaries around Dodge City there, and let's roll that forward. You can see convection going up in the mountains right there around Trinidad and Walsenburg. So we get our initial convection going up on the mountains. Yep, Trinidad all the way down to Las Vegas, New Mexico. And those move out into the plains, out across the grasslands right there. So the anvils on these, they don't look too impressive. They look just kind of fuzzy. So that's indicating probably weak instability on a lot of these cells here. I do see a little bit of structure coming together in Kansas. If you look up in the top right, looks like something going on right here. Looks like up north of there, maybe some transverse banding, kind of an open cell appearance. And then down to the south, we've got kind of a different orientation going on there. So maybe some sort of boundary right around that area. And the Dodge City radar would probably reveal that for you. So moving forward, more cells west of Colorado Springs, and the other cells continue moving eastward towards the panhandles. So that's how things look in that area. And oh yeah, we've got that other region, New York. Okay, so starting out, this is around 1:30 Eastern Time, and we can see a large anvil from cells in western New York and western Pennsylvania, but we've got this other congested area out ahead of the line, and this is probably one big reason why they went with that severe risk area. These are cells out ahead of a line, so there's a little bit of enhanced tornado potential on those. And the cells do go up around 2 o'clock, developing around Kingston, out to just north of, I don't know, my geography's not that great out there. Anyway, they do get going the other cells in that line catch up, and then towards 4 to 5 p.m. they're moving southeast towards Long Island, New York City, and Philadelphia there. And there's tail end Charlie out there around, I guess that'd be the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area. All right, so let's head to the rest of the charts, and what we'll do is we'll return to the surface chart here. And now that we have an idea what's going on, we can see that there's probably some outflow boundaries. Maybe something like that right there. Kind of a complex setup. And then our main cells kind of strewn across the panhandles like that. The moisture field indicating there's 70s dew points making it northward. 70s just southwest of Fort Worth. That's probably where some of the higher theta E temperatures are there. And then we have this little area of backed winds in the Red River region. So that could be indicative of maybe a mesolow, perhaps, in this area here. In any case, that would be an area to watch if we had a little more instability there. Okay, let's head into the remainder of the charts. Storms across the Texas Panhandle right there. And there's our outgoing storms there in the New York City area. And let's see how much instability we're looking at this evening. I'm going to go with the 100 millibar mixed layer. And it looks like the best instability is back over the DC area down to Virginia, looking at about 1,500 to 2,000 capes in that region, and instability a bit weaker out ahead of the line off the Long Island coast there. Okay, heading into the upper level chart. This is the 250 millibar analysis for this morning. So there goes our old jet right there across the Midwest. And I'm trying to find out where my pen is. I'm trying to find my drawing tool. Let me see if I can get that going here. Okay. Sometimes that tool kind of freaks out there. Okay, I think it's running now. Back to the charts, 250 millibar chart showing the main polar front jet still up there in Canada, but we're starting to pull in this very strong subtropical jet from the southwestern U.S. You can see the appearance of 80 to 90 knot flow there in Tucson and El Paso. And the flow is definitely kind of trophy out in the southwestern U.S. And then we have this cutoff high in Washington. So this is what we refer to as a Rex block. So these two systems here, they will kind of act together to lock up the flow. So it's possible we could be in this pattern for maybe at least several days here. So the flow in the plains becoming a little bit more cyclonic. 700 millibar temperatures do show some cooling in Texas. Fort Worth down to 8, only 7 at Oklahoma City, 4 there at Dodge City, and 11 at Amarillo. And I think we're going to see that cap return tomorrow. Maybe some of this thermal ridging possibly coming into the Texas-Oklahoma area. And then at 8:50, this is showing our moisture supply. It's looking better. Most of the better moisture west of Fort Worth, right around Del Rio, and looks like we have a very weak 20-knot low-level jet coming northward and just recurving up out towards Missouri there. Got quite a bit of cold air up in the Hudson Bay region. Still minus 20 in this area at 850 millibars. But a lot of that cold air is heading southeast. So this is our isobars and thickness. Surface front running from about Labrador down across New York. So it looks like those storms in that area are frontal driven. Pretty strong front coming in there through New England. The storms are pretty much right along that boundary there. And that's being driven by this 1022 millibar high in Yukon. On the west side, we've got a warm front across Manitoba there, coming back as a cold front in Alberta. And then down in Texas, you can see this trough running east-west, kind of in the Interstate 20 region. So probably we've got kind of a weak boundary through that area. Also, we've got some cold temperatures off the California coast there. That could indicate possibly a front coming inland. So if I was forecasting out in that area, I would probably scrutinize the surface chart there to see what's going on. Okay, this is probably a good time to head back into that satellite data. And I'll take a look over at chat, see what's going on there. All right, got 30 of you guys in here. Glad to see you all here this evening. Erica Baker, Coffeyville, Kansas, 76. Dew point of 69 there. We have Fun with Tech. Ryan Toomey's in Florida. Jeff Krob lurking from work there in Maryland, looking at that squall line. Willie Greenway joining from Georgia there. Brett Dean anticipating that rain and thunder there in Jersey. And hello to Mike Wan and Kathy Vanas. Rat there in Tucson. Texas Bluebonnets. Oh, okay, thanks. Christian Flock is asking, how does the theta E and dew points when they almost match up perfectly? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. I'm not. You might have to write that out there. How does the theta E and dew points when they almost match up perfectly? Sorry, you got me stumped there. Carl Berghoff joining us there, and Jeff Krob slid sideways from the PC to the admin PC. Best Weather PT explaining the theta E there. Yeah, the advantage of theta E, that tells us where the atmosphere is likely to be the most buoyant with the best vertical velocities, assuming that the upper levels, basically the atmosphere right above the ground, assuming that that is homogeneous across the region. That's pretty much all there is to it. So we just use that to kind of find where initiation may be most likely there. Electric Dog enjoying the daylight at 8 p.m. there. Contours and degrees on the map. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that one. Best Weather helping out there. Ryan Toomey is reporting rain coming down there in Florida. Shirley Keast, 63 in Michigan. Brett Dean, Cloud to Cloud and Anvil Crawlers there. Lightning in Florida. Mike Estrick reporting 65 in Denver. And yeah, there's all those storms there in Florida, and you can see the cyclonic rotation out there in the western Gulf. And up to the north, there's those cold anvils. It all looks kind of nondescript there on the visible imagery. But once you switch over to the infrared, that really nails down where the strongest storms are located. So right there around Baltimore, out towards north of D.C. there, getting some of the strongest activity. And that's pushing to the south there. And we can also use that principle to look at the anvils out on the high plains. Not quite as cold in that region there. So that right there can be an indicator that the storms are not quite as unstable. Very hot conditions in the desert southwest, really bringing out those purples out there in rattlesnake country. All right, we'll go ahead and do a couple quick scutees, and then we'll head into the forecast. I think for today we've got to look at Brookhaven. That's going to be Long Island. Let's go to this morning's sounding. So this is going to be in the New York City area. And this is showing the sounding for this morning, 12Z. Looks like dew points were pretty much in the upper 50s to low 60s, kind of shallow. So that's probably one reason why the severe weather is not too widespread there. Strong wind out of the west. So there could be some moisture lurking back in Florida, not Florida, in Pennsylvania, maybe in Maryland, maybe in Virginia, and possibly moving up towards New York during the day. So we've got to anticipate those changes to the sounding as the day goes on. You can see the atmosphere not very capped at all. Very high tropopause. And the lapse rates are actually pretty good for that region. If we, say, lift a parcel from about 61 degree dew point and maybe throw in 80 degree temperature, that gives us some cape there. Not a whole lot, but that's kind of a tall, skinny cape there. And the computation here shows 0 for the morning hours, but that's not factoring in the afternoon heating. So let's see how that changed. Okay, we don't have any data for Brookhaven, so let's take a look at Fort Worth. You can see the moisture coming up there at Fort Worth. Still a little bit of dry air just off the surface. And the temperature line is really moving over to the right side of the chart. The column is really warming and becoming kind of tropical. However, the wind flow still showing pretty weak today. Once you get up above 30,000 feet, we start picking up some 50 to 60 knot winds. And I guess this is probably a good time to head into the forecast. We'll start out with a high resolution rapid refresh, and we'll run that forward. So there's those storm areas there in Texas. It appears possibly an MCS developing there in the Panhandles, and that'll move down the Red River this evening. So by 4 a.m., they'll be coming into Ardmore and Denton and Bowie. And as so often happens with MCSs, that's likely to start dying off as the rest of the day goes on. Okay, so by 9 a.m. there's hardly anything left there. In the Central Plains tonight, there's that MCS down there to the south. And that's pretty much about all the action there is. It looks like a little bit of an MCV coming together there in Oklahoma. See that little bit of curl there towards the end? I'm not 100% sure about that, but it is showing maybe a little bit feature there up in the north side of that line. Then that brings us to New York, and I grabbed an earlier rapid refresh. I wanted to sample the air mass out ahead of the line. So I'm going to go down to Philadelphia. And this will show what the sounding looked like around 3 p.m. there. Some fairly healthy moisture there. Dew point 69 near the surface, and mid-60s dew points throughout the lowest 100 millibars there. Only a very subtle amount of capping there, and if we lift maybe the lowest 150 millibars, we'll take maybe a temperature of 90. And that should give us something like that right there. So a little bit of capping working on some parts of that line. However, the flip side of that is the shear. Looks like we got a little bit of 0 through 1 kilometer shear. That right there is a indicator that things could be favoring a little bit of severe weather. The bulk shear, though, is a little bit low, and that's because of the modest 50-knot flow here in the upper levels with the strong 20 to 30-knot flow from the same direction. So this is kind of a unidirectional profile here. So we're not really able to squeeze much speed shear out of that column there. The algorithm, though, did go for maybe some marginal tornadoes there. Maybe just enough shear being indicated there and enough instability to allow for that to happen there. Okay, so let's see what's going to happen for tomorrow. Looking at the NAM. We'll run that forward, and we're going to have that MCS moving through Oklahoma, so we're going to have possibly some boundaries along the Red River region for tomorrow. And then as the day goes on, the NAM is not breaking out much of anything. Maybe a couple of showers up in Tulsa, maybe a little activity there near Midland. But tomorrow is pretty quiet, and that's what the models indicated yesterday, both the NAM and the European model. So I guess if I had to chase, I might be looking at that cluster there around Midland. Maybe some activity there on the Edwards Plateau region. Things will be coming together there in the North Plains for later in the week. So going into Thursday, that front is going to be slipping out of Canada there. So it looks like something like that for our fronts. Possibly some warm frontal activity there in North Dakota. Let's take a look at the soundings up in that region. So Thursday's afternoon sounding indicating kind of a potent setup. Look at that moisture. Looks really good there. Pair that with 83 temperatures, 82, 83. And yeah, that's going to be about 1,000 to 2,000 capes. A little bit of capping, probably just right around the right amount. And it looks like we have just enough shear there to favor some rotating storms. So again, for Thursday, maybe some potential there in North Dakota. Then it looks like we have probably an MCS up in that region, maybe another one in Nebraska. And then going into Friday, we've got the lee side troughing there in Colorado. So we've got high pressure in this region right here, and we've got a gradient kind of blowing southeast to northwest in the Great Plains there. So that'll be bringing up some of the moisture through that region. And looks like we get some pretty good activity there. Maybe some upslope storms forming in southeastern Wyoming there around the Cheyenne region. So let's take a look at a forecast sounding. Again, this is for Friday. And the moisture is not too great, but this is the high plains there. Looks like the parcels are not very, yeah, the temperatures are kind of on the low side. Let me go down to the south a little bit, maybe towards around Garden City. Yeah, there's some pretty deep moisture right there, and we pick up the 82-degree dew points. So somewhere in between there, we've got a good atmospheric profile there. So there's our moisture. If I throw in maybe 77-degree temperatures, I've got a pretty good setup there for some good instability there. And again, Marginal capping, good moisture there, and the wind profile is not too bad in the low levels. The bulk shear is, the deep layer bulk shear is not that great. So this is kind of like a marginal profile here for severe weather, maybe a couple rotating cells possible, since it is May. And that takes us into Saturday. Well, that's it for the NAM. So we'll pick that up with the GFS. But before we do that, let's look at the upper level chart here. This is the 500 millibar heights and vorticity. There's our trough right there, trying to push through underneath that cutoff high there in Washington. So that's being kind of delayed there, and that's keeping the ridge across parts of the Great Plains. So for Wednesday, we're going to be under the influence of that ridge. You can see how the high plains is just downstream from that ridge right there. So that's probably going to be what shuts down that region tomorrow. Forecast sounding for the Dalhart Amarillo area. It's actually showing the moisture has fallen off a little bit, and yeah, the profile is warmed up a bit. Let me just take a quick look around the Altus area. Yeah, there's some pretty stout capping there. 700 millibar temperatures up to 11. All right, so that brings us to Thursday. So Thursday, there's going to be a little bit of a ridge there southwest of North Dakota. I believe Thursday, I think that was the North Dakota day, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, there will be a little bit of a ridge upstream, but it appears that low-level conditions are favorable for maybe some storms there. Strong jet coming into the Four Corners area, so the flow is going to be increasing, starting with the high plains on Thursday and Friday. So we should see an increase in thunderstorms all the way from Midland all the way up to Denver and Rapid City there. So for Friday, yeah, definitely looks like a Colorado and Wyoming day. So we've got that cyclonic flow right there. Downstream from that, we've got the anticyclonic flow. So basically, the area in between is a favorable baroclinic zone. So very likely, we've got maybe some sort of baroclinic low. I mean, this probably isn't exactly what's going to happen because of the influence of the mountains and so on. But synoptically, this should favor a cold front like that and a warm front maybe up to the north like that. Oops, wrong way. Okay, and that puts Colorado and Wyoming in the divergent left front quadrant of this jet. So there's the jet max, and that's the left front quadrant right there across Wyoming. Okay, going into Saturday, well, things move out into the high plains here, out into the Dakotas, and we'll have to pick that up with the GFS. In any case, it looks like the flow is increasing, even down in Texas and New Mexico there. So we'll pick that up with the GFS and also look at the European model. Okay, starting with Friday. There's Friday's weather map, and there's the action there in Colorado. And we can see the backed flow there in Nebraska. Could possibly be some storms, maybe out towards Goodland and Burlington. However, this cold air mass will be on its way south. This is all a big shot of cold air. Going into Saturday, this is how it looks at peak heating time. There's our cold front blasting through Colorado down towards Clayton. And then we'll have a warm front, looks like around Omaha to around Bethany and Des Moines. So this could be a good day for maybe some warm front chasing, maybe from Des Moines to Omaha back towards Grand Island. As far as the dry line, I'm not too sure. I know the dry line is out there, but the models are not too keen on getting storms going in that region. We may have to wait for the main trough to pull out of the western U.S. Then for Sunday, cold front oozes very slowly to the south there. Now it looks like the dry line gets going with the approach of maybe some of that troughing out to the west. And it looks like maybe some warm front storms around the Chicago area, Rockford, Milwaukee, and Chicago. This is for Sunday. Then for Monday, looks like we've got this boundary just kind of lurking out in that area, possibly being reinforced by some outflow. So probably some rain chances along and north of I-40. And then for Tuesday, the 22nd, looks like a lot of that moisture pushes pretty far to the west there. This is indicative of a rather large surge of moisture making it all the way back into New Mexico. At least that's the way it looks right there. Maybe a little action up in the Midwest. And that's probably about as far as I'm going to go with the forecasts, because a lot could change between now and then, but it does look like a big high settling in across the Great Lakes area, and there could be a little bit of a push of cold air, not cold air, but I should say dry air and mild air coming into Texas and Oklahoma there, and that'll probably disrupt a little bit of the moisture feed for the 24th, 25th, 26th. Maybe some activity on the high plains, but that's going to be about it, I think. And then we have another front coming down around the 26th. And yeah, we've got things unsettled down there in the Gulf. Looks like that tropical system now, the model is suggesting movement up toward Pensacola. Last night's run, I think, had it going across Miami. However, the model is not really firm on the date that any of this is going to happen, and the track is uncertain. So we're just going to have to just keep looking at this over the next week or two to see what happens. And then the European model. We'll just take a quick look at that for the next 7 days. Okay, Wednesday. Well, we've pretty much identified that this is going to be kind of a down day. It looks like the European model trying to go for a little bit of elevated stuff, maybe around Dalhart to Vega. And that brings us to Thursday. This is when we're looking at possibly action up in the Dakotas. And yeah, there's the storms up there. So that's possibly a warm front situation there. And it looks like some sort of trough, maybe south towards Rapid City and Scottsbluff, maybe a few storms along that also. But I think the better flow is going to be up in the Dakotas right there. Then things will shift south on Friday. This is when we're looking for that upslope day there. So yeah, possibly storms anywhere from McCook to Akron, and looks like the European model may be going a little bit further south with these storms, like closer to I-70 there. Then for Sunday, I'm sorry, Saturday. Okay, Saturday, that cold air will be pushing south. Looks like the model is kind of fixated on Iowa, Kansas City, and I kind of wonder if is that what the GFS had? Because I remember we were looking for possible storms out in that area. And if this is the same date, looks like the European model going for the same thing. So this is on Saturday. And then I think on Sunday it was actually moving it towards Chicago. So let's bring that up to Sunday. And looks like the European model is going actually a little bit further south than the GFS. So this is going for more of a Ohio River Valley region. And wow, look at West Texas there. Looks like some Guadalupe Peak and Carlsbad action down there. A lot of that moisture being shunted to the west out onto the higher terrain. So if you're chasing on the 20th, this could be a good day to visit the caverns out in that region. Okay, then the rest of it, just kind of a very quick overview. There comes that high settling in across the Great Lakes. The model is going for storms developing on the southern plains once again around the 21st, 22nd. So, doesn't look quite as bad as you might think. So the flow is just a little bit on the weak side. That's the main problem there. And I don't see anything really organized anywhere on this chart sequence. I do see the troughing coming in from the west there. You can see those thickness contours starting to form a gradient there in Arizona. This is on the... Oh, that's current data. Okay. So yeah, it's our incoming storm. All right. That's going to be our forecast there. Let me just take one last look at chat. Okay, yeah, Willie Greenway trying to keep it together there with the program. And that's correct. It will start making sense very soon. I'm just reading the chat here. Jeff Krob says INSEP was supposed to be working on the GFS issue of spurious tropical cyclone spin-ups. So that could be what that is out in the Gulf. I know that the model has not really been very consistent with when that tropical cyclone is supposed to come out. I remember it was forecasting around the 22nd or 23rd. It was supposed to eject northward, and now it's putting that around the 27th or 28th. So that kind of inconsistency does kind of point to something weird going on with the model. So we'll just kind of watch it for in the next 4 or 5 days, and if it keeps doing this, then we'll know that that is indeed something that's not really valid. Supercomputer glitches there. Willie Greenway, Chapter 3, Weather Analysis and Forecasting, very good. And yeah, you can definitely get those books at weathergraphics.com. I need to make a slide for that. I don't think I have one. Okay, yeah, weathergraphics.com. I've got all my books on there, and I would recommend starting with Weather Analysis and Forecasting, and maybe progressing to either the Weather Radar Handbook or the Severe Storm Handbook, which is a little bit more technical. Okay, that's about all I got for tonight. I hope you appreciate, well, I know you appreciate the program. Hope you enjoyed the program, and we'll see you again in about 23 hours and 10 minutes. So take care, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.